My name's Claudine Rivers, and my son Malcolm has no idea who his mother really is. He's 36 now, married, working hard, living his version of success. To him, I'm just the quiet woman who raised him alone, cooked dinner with whatever was in the pantry, and worked some small office job that barely paid the bills. That's the version of me I let him believe. In truth, I've been a senior operations executive for one of the biggest logistics companies in the country for over 20 years. My monthly income would make most people dizzy, but I never flashed it. I live in the same modest apartment I've had for ages. My car's old but dependable. I shop clearance racks, reuse handbags until the straps fray, and cook at home every night. Because to me, money was never about showing off. It was about quiet power, security, and the satisfaction of knowing no one could define my worth. Then last Tuesday, Malcolm called me. His tone was strange, nervous, careful. "Ma," he said, "I need a favor. Nia's parents are in town from Atlanta. They want to meet you. We're having dinner Saturday at a restaurant downtown. Please come, okay?" The way he said please told me everything. He wasn't inviting me. He was managing me, making sure his mother didn't embarrass him in front of his in-laws. I asked gently, "Do they know anything about me?" He hesitated. "I told them you work at a small office, live by yourself. You're simple." That word, simple, cut deeper than he knew. To him it meant humble, maybe even harmless. But to me it sounded like less than. I didn't argue. I just said, "All right, baby, I'll be there." After hanging up, I sat in my small living room, looking at my old couch, my chipped coffee table, the faint hum of my refrigerator, and I decided right then, if my son thought I was poor, and if Nia's parents were the type to judge by appearance, I would let them see exactly what they wanted to see. I would play the part, so on Saturday night I dressed the part, an old beige dress that had lost its shape. Scuffed shoes, no jewelry, no perfume, my hair tied back in a loose bun. In the mirror, I looked like a woman the world had passed by. Perfect. I wanted to know how they'd treat a woman they thought had nothing. Because I had a feeling Nia's family measured people not by their hearts, but by their wallets. And that night, I was going to find out exactly what they were made of. But I had no idea that pretending to be poor would expose everyone's truth, including my son's. The restaurant Malcolm chose sat on the top floor of a glass tower, one of those places where the parking lot had more luxury cars than a dealership. The doorman greeted me with a look that said I didn't belong. I just smiled, clutched my worn handbag, and walked in. The dining room sparkled, candles, city lights, and white tablecloth so crisp they looked ironed onto the tables. My heart thumped softly in my chest. Not from nerves, I've handled multi-million-dollar meetings, but from curiosity. Malcolm was standing near the window, straightening his tie. He looked sharp in his charcoal suit, the kind I probably paid for years ago without him realizing. Beside him stood Nia, my daughter-in-law. Her dress was elegant, cream with a gold belt. Every hair in place, every gesture rehearsed. And then there they were, her parents, Patricia and Leonard Moore. Patricia wore a bright emerald dress covered in tiny sequins. Her neck glittered with gold chains. Leonard's suit probably cost more than some people's rent. Their posture screamed confidence, but their eyes screamed judgment. When Malcolm saw me, he froze. I saw his expression falter as he took in my faded dress and thrift store shoes. "Ma," he said under his breath, "you came." "Of course, baby," I said softly, smiling like I was grateful to be invited. Nia gave me a polite hug. Polite, not warm. "Good to see you, Mrs. Rivers," I nodded. "Please, call me Claudine." Her mother extended her hand, fingers heavy with rings. "Patricia," she said curtly. "This is my husband, Leonard." His handshake was quick, limp, and cold. We sat down. Nobody pulled out my chair. I didn't mind. I wasn't there for comfort. The waiter placed elegant menus in front of us, half the words in French. I pretended to study mine, squinting like I couldn't make sense of it. Patricia leaned in, smiling without warmth. "Would you like me to help you, dear?" "Please," I said, letting my voice tremble just a little. She waved a manicured hand at the waiter. "Something simple for her," she said. "No need for anything fancy." That word again. Simple. The air thickened as conversation began. Patricia talked about their hotel suite overlooking the river. Only $1,000 a night, but worth it for the view. Leonard bragged about his real estate deals. His new Tesla, their property in Savannah. Every story was a parade of wealth. Every glance toward me a silent comparison. I smiled through all of it. I'd spent my career surrounded by people just like them. But what they didn't know was, I'd become richer than all of them, not in noise, but in silence. When Patricia asked me what I did for a living, that's when the game truly began. And I was ready to play. Patricia tilted her head, her eyes soft with fake sweetness. "So, Claudine, what is it you do?" I kept my expression humble. "I work in an office, ma'am. Just small clerical work, answering phones, filing papers." Leonard's brow lifted slightly. "Administrative work," he said, nodding as though he'd just confirmed a theory. "That's honest. Everyone has to start somewhere," Patricia chuckled lightly. "Of course. Not everyone's meant to climb the ladder, right?" I laughed faintly. "I guess not." The waiter arrived with appetizers, portions so small they could fit on a cracker. Patricia didn't waste time pointing out that hers was imported from France. Leonard sipped his wine like he owned the vineyard. I could feel Nia's discomfort growing by the second. She tried to fill the silence with small talk, but her mother always found a way to steer it back toward money. "So, Malcolm," Patricia said, "does your mother live alone?" "Yes," Malcolm replied quickly. "She has a little apartment." Patricia pressed her hand dramatically against her chest. "Oh, Claudine, that must be hard. Living alone, working so much, keeping things together at your age." I smiled gently. "It has its moments. But I manage just fine." Leonard leaned forward. "Do you have a pension or anything? Social Security?" Before I could answer, Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Leonard, please, she doesn't need to discuss personal finances." Then, turning to me with that same sugary smile, she added, "We were just worried that Malcolm might feel obligated to help you. Newlyweds shouldn't have that kind of burden, you understand?" Burden. There it was, the real message behind all their small talk. I folded my napkin slowly. "Oh, I'd never want to be a burden to my son," I said softly. "He has his own life." "Good," Patricia said with obvious relief. "You're such a strong woman. We really admire that. Though, of course," she continued, swirling her glass of wine, "we all wish we could give our children more. It must be difficult not being able to help financially, especially for big moments, weddings, down payments." Nia's fork clattered against her plate. "Mama," she whispered, but Patricia kept talking. Leonard smiled thinly. "We helped quite a bit, Down payment on their townhouse, the honeymoon. That's just how we were raised. Family supports family." I nodded. "That's kind of you." Patricia lifted her chin slightly. "And what did you give them for their wedding, Claudine?" I looked her dead in the eyes, still wearing that quiet smile. "Just my blessing," I said. "And sometimes that's worth more than money." Patricia laughed softly, unaware that the ground beneath her was starting to crack. Because the next thing she said, the offer she made, was about to turn this polite dinner into a storm they'd never forget. Patricia set her fork down carefully, her gold bracelets clinking together like tiny warning bells. Her voice softened, the kind of tone people use right before saying something cruel. Claudine," she began, "Leonard and I have been talking. We just want what's best for Malcolm and Nia. They're young, building a future, and we'd hate to see unnecessary stress fall on them." I tilted my head. "Stress?" She smiled. "Well, yes. Emotional, financial, all that. It must be hard managing everything on your own, especially at your age. Leonard and I were thinking, maybe we could help you." I stayed silent. Patricia took that as encouragement. "Not much," she continued. "Just a small monthly allowance. Say $500 or so. Enough to make things easier for you. Groceries, bills, That way Malcolm doesn't have to worry." It's really for his peace of mind? Her words landed on the table like poison wrapped in lace. Leonard nodded as though she'd just made a generous business proposal. It's not charity, he added. We're just trying to keep balance in the family. I looked at Malcolm. His face was tight, jaw locked, eyes darting between us. Mama, you don't have to. Patricia raised her hand delicately. Let's not make this dramatic. It's a practical solution. I folded my hands neatly on the table. My voice, still soft, carried a calm that made Patricia lean in without realizing why. So, I said, you're offering me money, so I won't. What exactly? Patricia blinked. Oh no, that's not what I meant. We just think it's best for young couples to have space, to grow without interruptions. Ah, I nodded slowly. So you're paying for silence. Leonard's smile faltered. That's a harsh way to put it. Honest, I corrected gently. Not harsh, the table went still. Even the waiter approaching with fresh wine seemed to sense the tension and retreated like a soldier backing out of a battlefield. Patricia tried to recover, forcing a brittle laugh. Claudine, you're misunderstanding. We only mean well. I'm sure you do, I said, keeping my tone even. So let me understand this. You'll pay me $500 a month, and in return, I stop visiting, stop calling, stop showing up. Is that the arrangement? Leonard's voice dropped to a whisper. It's just best for everyone, I nodded again. Thank you for clarifying. Malcolm leaned forward. Mama, please don't take this the wrong way. I turned to him, my expression serene. Oh, I won't, but they might. Because at that moment, I decided something. I'd been playing poor long enough. They wanted to buy me off, but they were about to learn that I was the one who could buy them out. Patricia's smile stayed frozen, but I could see the flicker of discomfort behind her eyes. She'd expected gratitude, maybe tears, or at least embarrassment. But all she got was my silence, deep and measured. Well, she said finally, shifting in her seat, I'm glad we understand each other. We can arrange the transfer starting next month. I dabbed my lips with the napkin, then looked at her with calm curiosity. Just one thing, I said. How much exactly were you thinking? Patricia blinked. Excuse me? Your offer, I repeated softly. You mentioned $500 a month. Is that your final number? Leonard gave a dry laugh. This isn't a negotiation, Claudine. Oh, but it is, I replied smoothly. Everything involving money is a negotiation, especially when you're buying someone's absence. The air thickened. Even Malcolm, who'd been silent so far, stared at me in confusion. Patricia cleared her throat. Claudine, I think you're taking this the wrong way. I leaned forward slightly, my voice still gentle. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're offering a poor old woman a monthly allowance in exchange for staying out of your daughter's life. Is that not correct? Leonard shifted in his chair. That's an unfair assumption. I smiled faintly. I've sat in boardrooms where men twice your age tried to lowball me with prettier words, Mr. Moore. You're not the first. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? But I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my worn handbag and took out my phone. Cracked screen. Old case. I opened the calculator app and started tapping. $500 a month, I murmured. That's $6,000 a year. At my age, let's say I live another 20 years. That's a total of $120,000 for me to vanish from my son's life. Patricia's mouth opened slightly. That's not what this is. Oh, but it is, I said, smiling again. That's the price tag you've put on me. For the first time that evening, no one spoke. Nia looked down at her hands. Malcolm stared at me, realization dawning. Patricia's voice trembled just slightly. You're twisting this, Claudine, am I? I said softly. Then allow me to untwist it for you. I leaned back, my voice steady and cool. See, Patricia, when people talk about money too much, it's because they've forgotten what actually gives it meaning. Character, integrity, compassion. Without those things, wealth is just noise. Her face flushed red. Who do you think you are? I met her gaze without blinking. Someone who doesn't need your money. And when I told her why I didn't need it, the truth hit harder than any slap could. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Even the background music from the restaurant felt distant, faint, like it had retreated from the tension at our table. Patricia finally broke the silence. "You don't need our money?" she repeated, her laugh forced and thin. "Claudine, be serious. Everyone needs help sometimes." "Of course," I said gently. "But the kind of help I need can't be wired into a checking account." Leonard leaned forward, his tone suddenly patronizing. "Look, Mrs. Rivers, no one's trying to insult you. We just want what's best for Nia and Malcolm. You've worked hard all your life, we respect that. But it's okay to accept a little support when things are tight." "Things," I echoed softly, "aren't tight." Patricia frowned. "You mean you're comfortable?" "I mean," I said slowly, "I'm not what you think I am." Malcolm's brow furrowed. "Mama, what are you saying?" I set down my fork, folded my napkin carefully, and looked at all of them, one by one. "You see this dress?" I asked. "This old handbag? The shoes that should have been thrown out 5 years ago?" "I wore them tonight on purpose," Patricia blinked. "On purpose?" "Yes," I said. "Because I wanted to see how your family would treat someone you thought had nothing." Leonard's smirk faded. "You're joking," I shook my head. "I'm not." Patricia forced another laugh. "So what are you saying, Claudine? That you're rich?" "I'm saying," I replied calmly, "that I don't measure worth by appearance. But if you're asking about money, let's just say I've done all right for myself." Malcolm looked stunned. "Mama?" "I don't understand." "I know, baby," I said softly, "because I never wanted you to. I wanted you to grow up learning effort, not entitlement. But I suppose the time for hiding is over." Patricia crossed her arms, her tone dripping disbelief. "And what exactly do you do that's so special?" I smiled faintly. "I'm a senior operations executive. Regional division. I oversee logistics for 5 states. My annual income is more than most people's mortgages, combined." Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. Leonard's hand froze around his glass. Malcolm's voice cracked. "You mean, all this time you've been living simply?" I finished for him. "Yes, because simplicity is freedom. And freedom is something money can't buy if you spend your life trying to impress people who don't deserve to be impressed." Patricia's face was pale now. "That's not possible. You live in a small apartment." I smiled. "That's what you see. What I own, you'll never guess." Because what I revealed next didn't just silence them. It flipped the entire power dynamic of that dinner in one breath. Patricia's eyes darted to Malcolm as if begging him to say it was a joke. Leonard sat stiff, his shoulders tight, his pride trembling under the weight of my calm tone. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch, the way I'd done in hundreds of board meetings where patience won more battles than anger ever could. "I've been with Gulfstar Logistics for over 20 years, I said finally. "Started as an assistant in the mailroom, worked my way up through operations. Now I run 5 regional branches, oversee a few thousand employees, and sign off on more contracts than I can count." Leonard let out a soft scoff. "That's a nice story, but—" I reached into my old handbag, pulled out a slim leather card holder, and placed a glossy corporate ID on the table. My name, Claudine Rivers, Regional Executive Director, gleamed beneath the company logo. Patricia stared at it like it was counterfeit currency. This can't be real." "Oh, it's real," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "The same way your assumptions were real, just wrong." Malcolm swallowed hard. "Mama, you make that kind of money?" "About $40,000 a month," I said matter-of-factly. "Sometimes more when bonuses hit." "But that's not the point." Patricia blinked rapidly. What do you mean, not the point?" I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked on hers. "Because the lesson here isn't about income, Patricia. It's about character. You measured me by what you thought I didn't have. You talked about burdens and space, as if poor meant unworthy. But you see, I don't flaunt my success because I don't need to. People who are truly secure don't perform for approval." Leonard's tone sharpened. "You deceived us." "I did," I said calmly. "I played a part. But I only gave you the opportunity to show who you really are. And you did. Beautifully." Patricia's face turned red. You had no right to trick us like that. I smiled faintly. And you had no right to belittle someone you thought was beneath you. Yet you did it without hesitation. So tell me, Patricia, which of us is worse? No one spoke. Nia sat frozen, her eyes glistening with shame. Malcolm couldn't look at me. The room felt like a held breath. Finally, I reached across the table and took my ID card back. I came tonight to meet family, I said softly. Instead, I met investors, in appearances, in pride, in image. But I don't invest in those things anymore. Patricia clenched her fists under the table. You think this makes you better than us? I smiled. No, it just proves I never needed to be like you. And when the waiter brought the check, fate handed me one last chance to make sure they'd never forget who they'd tried to buy off. The waiter approached our table slowly, carrying the leather-bound check folder with both hands like it contained state secrets. His timing couldn't have been more perfect. Patricia straightened in her seat, desperate to reclaim control. We'll take care of that, she said quickly, snapping her fingers toward the bill before the waiter could even speak. Please, it's on us. Her voice trembled, though she tried to mask it with a brittle laugh. I could tell she wanted to prove something, that despite what I'd revealed, she still held the upper hand. The waiter nodded and set the check down in front of Leonard. He pulled out a shiny gold credit card and placed it on top with an exaggerated flick of the wrist. Thank you, sir, the waiter said politely, walking away. No one spoke. The silence between us stretched like a drawn wire. I watched the city lights flicker against the glass windows, their reflections dancing across Patricia's tense face. 2 minutes later, the waiter returned, his expression hesitant. I'm sorry, sir, he said softly. Your card was declined. Leonard's head snapped up. What? Declined, the waiter repeated. Would you like me to try again? Patricia's eyes went wide. That's impossible. Run it again, the waiter nodded, disappearing for a moment. Nia's hands trembled in her lap. Malcolm rubbed the bridge of his nose. I sat still, not gloating, just waiting. When the waiter came back, his tone was apologetic but firm. I'm so sorry, sir. It didn't go through. Leonard's face turned crimson. There must be a problem with the system. Patricia fumbled in her purse and pulled out another card. Platinum this time. Try this one, she snapped, her voice cracking. The waiter took it quietly. A minute later, he was back again. I'm sorry, ma'am. Declined as well. Patricia froze. The air turned thick with embarrassment. The couple across from us tried not to stare, but even the servers at nearby tables were glancing over. Leonard was already dialing his bank, whispering furiously into his phone. They said there's some kind of freeze on the account, something about a suspicious charge. Patricia's breathing quickened. Leonard, this is humiliating. I reached calmly into my old handbag, the same faded one they'd sneered at earlier, and pulled out my wallet. From it, I drew a black titanium card, unassuming, heavy, gleaming under the candlelight. I set it gently on the table in front of the waiter. Here, I said, put everything on this, and please add a generous tip. Patricia stared at the card, speechless. The waiter blinked. Of course, ma'am. As he walked away, I turned back to Patricia and Leonard. Don't worry, I said softly. I'm sure your accounts will unfreeze tomorrow. But for tonight, I smiled. Dinner's on me. What I told them next wasn't about money. It was about worth. And that truth would cut deeper than any declined card ever could. The waiter disappeared with my card, and the tension at the table sat so thick it could have been sliced with a knife. Patricia's lips quivered. Her composure cracked clean through. Leonard leaned back, silent now, his earlier arrogance folded into something small and uncomfortable. I didn't rush to speak. Silence has power, and I'd learned to use it well. Finally, I looked at all of them and said softly, You see, there's a difference between money and worth. Money buys moments. Worth earns respect. And respect, I paused, can't be purchased no matter what kind of card you slide across a table. Patricia's cheeks flushed. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I shook my head. No, Patricia. I'm not. I don't enjoy seeing anyone embarrassed. But I do believe life has a funny way of showing us mirrors when we refuse to see ourselves clearly. Leonard's jaw tightened. You think we're bad people because we offered you help? No, I said. I think you're small-minded for believing someone like me needed your help. Patricia's voice trembled. You set us up, Claudine. You wanted to humiliate us. I leaned forward, my voice calm but unflinching. I wanted to understand who was joining my son's life. And what I found was people who mistake humility for weakness and wealth for value. You wanted to measure me, and now you've been measured, Malcolm whispered. Mama, please. I turned to him gently. Baby, I'm not angry. But I raised you to know that a person's worth isn't in their title or their bank account. If you forget that, you lose the part of yourself that makes you human. He nodded slowly, shame flickering behind his eyes. Nia finally spoke, her voice small. Mrs. Rivers, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they'd... I reached across and touched her hand softly. You don't owe me an apology, sweetheart. Sometimes the hardest thing is realizing that family doesn't always teach you the right values, but it's never too late to learn them. Patricia crossed her arms tightly, but her eyes glistened. We were just trying to protect our daughter. I understand that, I said. But protection built on pride is just fear wearing jewelry. Leonard looked away. The waiter returned, setting down the receipt and my card with a quiet, "Thank you, ma'am." I signed without glancing at the total. Then I stood, smoothed my faded dress, and said, Well, this has been enlightening. Patricia's voice cracked. Claudine, wait. You don't have to leave like this, I smiled gently. Oh, I'm not leaving angry. I'm leaving free. And so should you. But as I walked out of that restaurant, I didn't realize the night wasn't over, because someone followed me into the parking lot with a confession that would change everything. The night air hit my face like a cool balm as I stepped out of the restaurant. The city lights shimmered off car windows, and the faint hum of traffic filled the silence that followed me. I walked toward my old sedan, the same one Patricia probably pitied earlier, feeling oddly peaceful. Then I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Mrs. Rivers. Wait, I turned. Nia stood a few yards away, her cream dress glowing softly under the streetlight. Her eyes shimmered, not with pride, but guilt. I didn't mean for any of that to happen, she said breathlessly. Mama Patricia can be intense. She doesn't mean harm. She just likes to control the narrative? I finished gently. Nia gave a small, ashamed laugh. Exactly that. She stepped closer. You don't know how many times I've told her to stop worrying about appearances. But she thinks status protects us. She grew up poor and swore she'd never feel that helpless again. I nodded slowly. Fear has a way of turning into arrogance if you let it, Nia sighed, brushing a tear away. When Malcolm told me about this dinner, I thought maybe you'd be the one judging us. He said you were quiet, reserved, hard to read. But you handled everything with more grace than any of us deserved, I smiled faintly. Grace is easier when you've already survived harder storms. She hesitated. Can I be honest with you? Please do. I love your son, she said. But he's been trying so hard to impress my parents that he's starting to lose himself. He doesn't even tell them when he's stressed. He just pretends everything's fine. He thought if he could prove himself financially, they'd finally respect him. I felt a pang deep in my chest. And what about you, Nia? What do you respect? She looked at me, eyes glistening. Honesty. Kindness. The kind of strength you showed tonight. Her words hit me harder than she knew. Because beneath all my poise and calm, I'd been angry. Not just at Patricia, but at Malcolm, too. Hearing Nia's sincerity softened that edge. Nia, I said quietly, you can't fix people who measure love in currency, but you can teach them by example. Show them that peace of mind is the only real wealth worth protecting, she nodded, tears slipping freely now. I will, I promise. Then she surprised me. She hugged me, tight and trembling. I'm proud to be your daughter-in-law, she whispered, and for the first time that evening, I believed her. But just as I was about to drive away, Malcolm appeared, and what he confessed next made me question everything I thought I knew about his marriage. Nia stepped back as Malcolm approached, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders heavy with something heavier than pride. His face was pale under the streetlight, eyes darting between us like a boy caught between two worlds. "Ma," he started quietly. "Can we talk for a second?" Nia gave him a soft look and nodded. "I'll wait by the car," she said before walking away. Malcolm stood there for a long moment, the sound of passing cars filling the silence. Then finally he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. The words came out small, like they'd been buried for too long. "I should have defended you in there. I should have stopped them." I looked at him gently. "Then why didn't you?" He swallowed hard. "Because—" I was ashamed. The honesty in his voice cracked something open inside me. "Of me?" I asked softly. "No, Mama. Of myself." He looked down, his voice trembling. "You worked your whole life to build something from nothing. And I kept comparing myself to you. You made it on your own, with nobody handing you anything. I thought if I couldn't outdo you, then at least I could hide behind my wife's family success." "Malcolm," he wiped his eyes. "I told Nia's parents you were simple because it made me feel less like a disappointment. I thought if you came off humble, they wouldn't expect me to be some big shot either. But the truth is, I've been drowning trying to live up to a version of success that isn't even mine." I stepped closer and put a hand on his arm. "Baby, success was never about climbing faster than someone else. It's about staying true while you climb. You forgot that part." He nodded, his eyes shining. "You're right. And tonight, hearing you talk, watching you stay calm while they tried to humiliate you, it hit me. I've been measuring myself with the wrong ruler." I smiled softly. "The only ruler that matters is the one your conscience holds." He let out a shaky laugh. "You always know what to say." "I've had practice," I said. "And now it's your turn. Start by being honest, not just with me, but with Nia. She needs to know the man she married isn't trying to be perfect. Just real." He nodded again, and for the first time in years, I saw the little boy who used to run home from school to show me his drawings. Proud, open, pure. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "Don't thank me, baby. Just do better." But even as we reconciled, I had no idea that the truth about me, the part I'd kept buried even from Malcolm, was about to surface in a way that would change our family forever. Malcolm and I stood there in the cool night air, the weight between us slowly melting into something tender, something long overdue. But deep down, I knew there was still one truth I hadn't told. Not to him, not to anyone. He thought I'd simply built a career, worked hard, saved wisely. That was only part of the story. "Ma," he said softly, breaking my thoughts. "I meant what I said. I want to do better. I want to understand you, everything you went through." I smiled faintly, though my chest tightened. "Some stories are better left in the past, baby." He shook his head. "Not this one." I exhaled slowly, leaning against my car. The streetlight painted a soft glow across the hood. "You know how I told you I started in the mailroom at Gulfstar Logistics?" "Yeah, that's true. But what I never told you," I said, my voice low, "is that I didn't just climb the ladder. I built one of the rungs myself." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was one of 3 employees who discovered a loophole in a federal shipping contract years ago. One that was costing the company millions. I brought it to the board's attention when everyone else was too scared. They fixed it, saved the business from bankruptcy, and quietly handed me stock options to keep it under wraps." Malcolm's eyes widened. "Stock options?" "Yep," I said. "That little thank you turned into something big when the company went public." "I didn't just earn a salary, Malcolm. I earned ownership," he blinked, processing. "You've been sitting on that kind of money all this time?" I nodded slowly. "I didn't want it to change who you became. You needed to know struggle, not because I wanted you to suffer, but because I wanted you to value. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy contentment. I had to let you learn that on your own." He was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, he said, "You could have told me, Ma." I smiled sadly. And risk raising a man who thought fortune was a shortcut instead of a journey? No, baby. You had to earn your own name before you ever knew mine carried weight. He nodded, eyes glistening. I get it now. You didn't hide your success. You protected me from it. I touched his cheek gently. Exactly. For the first time that night, he looked proud. Not of what I had, but of who I was. But what neither of us knew was that the truth I'd just shared wouldn't stay between us, because someone else had been listening from the shadows. The parking lot had thinned out. The restaurant lights dimmed, and the hum of the night settled around us. Malcolm hugged me tight, his voice softer than it had been in years. Thank you, Mama, for everything. For believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I smiled, patting his back. You'll be fine, baby. Just promise me one thing. No more pretending for anyone. Live your truth, even if it makes people uncomfortable. He nodded. I promise. We were about to part ways when I heard it. The faint scrape of heels behind a nearby car. A shadow shifted near the parking row. Malcolm turned, brow furrowed. Hello? A moment later, Patricia stepped into the light. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight, her purse clutched in both hands. I felt my stomach sink. She must have followed us. I didn't mean to listen, she stammered. I just came to apologize. And then I heard you talking about stock options, about ownership. Her tone trembled between awe and calculation. Malcolm stiffened. You were eavesdropping? Patricia ignored him and looked straight at me. Claudine, you're worth millions, aren't you? I took a slow breath. That's not your concern. Her eyes darted, thoughts spinning fast. You let us sit there humiliating you, pretending to be poor, when you could have bought that entire restaurant. Exactly, I said evenly. And yet, I still wouldn't trade my peace for your pride. She stepped closer. You could have told us. We could have… What? I interrupted. Respected me? No, Patricia. You don't respect people. You rank them. And when you couldn't rank me, you tried to erase me. Her face flushed. But there was something else there now, something sharper than embarrassment. Greed. Well, she said finally, straightening her shoulders, if that's true, then I think Malcolm and Nia deserve to know what kind of inheritance they're tied to. Families should be transparent. Malcolm stepped forward, his voice cold. You're out of line. Patricia smirked slightly. I'm just saying it changes things. Don't you think your wife has a right to know how much money her husband's mother really has? I felt a familiar calm wash over me, the same calm I used in corporate negotiations. Patricia, I said softly, if you're planning to use my success to stir up trouble, let me warn you, the one thing I have more of than money is patience. And I promise you, I know exactly how to use both. Her expression flickered, half fear, half defiance. She turned and walked away without another word. Malcolm exhaled. She's not going to let this go. No, I said quietly, watching her disappear into the dark. But neither will I. Because by the next morning, Patricia's curiosity would become a weapon, and I'd have to choose between my privacy and my pride. By sunrise, I knew Patricia wouldn't stay silent. Women like her never do. Not when they think they've stumbled onto power. Sure enough, around 9 the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Malcolm. His voice was tight, the kind that carries bad news before the words even land. Ma, he said, you might want to sit down. I already am, I replied. Though my gut had already guessed what was coming, he sighed. Patricia called everyone last night. Her sisters, some of Nia's cousins, even posted something on Facebook about you, about how you hid your wealth. I felt my chest tighten. She what? She said you've been pretending to be poor, that you deceived the family. Nia's furious. She already told her mom to take it down, but you know how Patricia is when she thinks she's exposing somebody. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. Let her talk, I said finally. The truth doesn't need defending, it just needs patience. Malcolm hesitated. You're not mad? I've faced worse than gossip, I said quietly. Let people say what they need to. The ones who matter already know who I am. But as soon as we hung up, my phone lit up again. This time, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something in me answered. "Mrs. Rivers?" a voice asked. "This is Denise Ward, reporter with the Atlanta Metro Journal. We received some information about you. Apparently a family dispute involving hidden wealth and corporate influence. Would you be willing to comment?" My pulse slowed. Patricia had taken it public. "Ms. Ward," I said calmly, "I don't discuss my private affairs. But if you're planning to print something, I'd suggest confirming your sources before you damage your reputation chasing a family rumor." The reporter paused. "So you're denying it?" "I'm clarifying it," I said firmly. "And one more thing. If you publish anything slanderous, my legal department will respond before the ink dries." The line went quiet. Then she muttered something polite and hung up. For a moment, I just sat there. The sunlight poured through the blinds, warming my small living room, my quiet, peaceful home that suddenly didn't feel so private anymore. Then, slowly, I smiled. Patricia thought she'd humiliated me, but what she didn't realize was that I'd spent decades mastering the art of turning exposure into opportunity. If she wanted a public game, I could play, gracefully, strategically, and with precision. I picked up my phone, opened my email, and began typing a message. If Patricia wanted attention, she was about to get it, on my terms. Because by the end of that day, the woman who tried to shame me would learn what real power looks like when it moves quietly but deliberately. I've learned in life that real power doesn't need to shout. It only needs to move. Patricia had chosen chaos. I would choose strategy. The first thing I did was send a short, precise email to Gulfstar's corporate communications department. They knew me well. 20 years of steady leadership had earned me more than a title. It earned me trust. "I expect a few inquiries may come your way regarding a personal matter involving my family. Please refer any reporters or third-party calls directly to my office. No comment is to be issued without my clearance." 2 replies came back within minutes. "Understood. Mrs. Rivers." Then I called my attorney, Mr. Hal Jenkins, an old friend who'd handled every major deal I'd ever closed. "Morning, Hal," I said. "Morning, Claudine. What kind of storm are we walking into today?" "The kind that starts with gossip and ends with a headline if we're not careful," I said. "A woman in my family is spreading rumors about my finances. If any reporter tries to print something, I want a defamation draft ready to go." He chuckled. "Got it. You want to scare them or sue them?" "Just scare them, politely," I replied. Sometimes silence backed by legal muscle speaks louder than anger. By noon, the story Patricia tried to spark online was already losing traction. Nia had commented publicly on her mother's post. "My husband's mother is a hard-working, self-made woman who's always valued integrity over image. Please stop spreading lies about her." The post caught fire. Hundreds of likes, supportive comments, even people from Gulfstar chiming in with praise. Patricia deleted everything by evening, but I wasn't finished. I composed one last message, not for the internet, not for lawyers, but for Patricia herself. "Patricia, thank you for reminding me how easily envy mistakes itself for righteousness. I hope you find peace in your own worth one day. Until then, consider this chapter closed. Claudine." I hit send and sat back, exhaling deeply. For the first time in days, my heart felt light. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stayed myself through it all. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't cursed. I'd moved with dignity, and sometimes that's the most disarming power of all. That evening, Malcolm called again. "Ma," he said, "Nia's been crying all afternoon. She said what you wrote to her mom hit her harder than any punishment could have." "Good," I said softly, "because I didn't write it to punish. I wrote it to end the noise." He chuckled. "You really are something else," I smiled. "No, baby. I'm just a woman who learned the difference between reacting and responding. But peace doesn't always last." And a week later, I got a letter in the mail that reminded me some battles don't end with words. A week passed. The storm had quieted, and my life slipped back into its usual rhythm. Morning coffee, paperwork, soft jazz humming in the background. Peace, at last. But peace has a way of testing whether it's real or just resting. That test came one Thursday afternoon in the form of a plain white envelope slipped under my door. No return address, no stamp. Just my name, Claudine Rivers, handwritten in ink that looked too deliberate to be casual. I frowned, turning it over. For a second, I wondered if it was from Patricia, but she wasn't the quiet type. Her drama came with perfume and punctuation. I slid my finger under the seal and opened it. Inside was a single page, neatly folded. The first line froze me in place. "You don't know me, but I knew your husband." My heart stumbled. His name was Charles Rivers. We worked together back in '92 before he passed. "I've carried a truth I should have told you long ago, one that concerns you and your son. Please call me JL." I read the letter twice, maybe 3 times before sitting down. My husband's name, Charles, felt like a ghost pulled out of the past. He'd died when Malcolm was 8, a sudden heart attack that left me with debt, grief, and a child to raise. But this letter hinted at something else, something unfinished. I looked at the signature again. JL. The name tugged at a memory. Faint, familiar. Then it hit me. James Langley, Charles's old co-worker from the trucking company he'd worked at before Gulfstar. I remembered him, polite, quiet, always too observant. I hadn't thought about him in decades. I stared out the window, my pulse steady but low. What truth could a man carry for over 20 years that still demanded to be told? That evening, I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and dialed the number scrawled at the bottom of the page. It rang twice before an older voice answered. "Hello? Mr. Langley?" A pause. "Claudine Rivers." His tone carried something heavy. Regret, maybe. "I wasn't sure you'd call." "You wrote me a letter," I said carefully. "You said you knew my husband," he exhaled shakily. "I did. And I know something he wanted you to know but never got the chance to tell you. It's about money, and a decision he made before he died." My grip on the phone tightened. "Go on?" There was silence. Then he said, almost whispering, "Your husband didn't just die of a heart attack, Claudine. He died protecting something that still belongs to you." And before I could ask what he meant, he said one name that shattered the calm I'd built for decades, Patricia Moore. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. The sound of that name, Patricia Moore, echoed in my head like a bell struck too hard. "Mr. Langley," I said carefully, "you'd better start explaining." He hesitated. I could hear the faint rustle of papers on the other end, as if he'd prepared for this moment but wasn't ready to live it. "Your husband, Charles," he began, "was working with me at Moore Freight Systems before he passed. It was a small logistics outfit back then, family-owned, nothing fancy. But the owner, Leonard Moore, had a sister helping run the books. Her name was Patricia." The world tilted slightly. "You mean—" "Yes," he said. "The same Patricia Moore." I gripped the arm of my chair, every breath deliberate. "She wasn't married yet," Langley continued. "Back then, she and Charles got close. Not romantically, but professionally. She was ambitious, always looking for leverage. When Charles discovered that Leonard had been cooking the books, she begged him to keep quiet. Promised him she'd fix things herself. But instead, she leaked parts of his discovery to make herself look like the hero. It nearly ruined him, my pulse pounded. "You're saying she betrayed him?" "Worse," he said. "When the scandal started unraveling, Patricia panicked. She made it seem like Charles had been the one mishandling the accounts. He was fired a week before his death." I closed my eyes, my throat tight. "He never told me that." "He couldn't," Langley said softly. "He didn't want you to think less of him. After he died, the company went under. Leonard started a new venture. Patricia disappeared for a few years, until she married that same Leonard. They rebranded, reinvented, and started over. Moore.Leonard and Patricia Moore. The same people who had sat across from me at dinner, judging my clothes and my dignity. The same woman who'd once destroyed my husband's name. My voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you telling me this now?" Langley sighed. "Because I found old documents while clearing my office. There's proof, accounting records, letters from Charles. He kept everything. He knew she'd wronged him. I couldn't live with that truth buried any longer. I stared at the floor, the pieces clicking into place like a cruel puzzle. Patricia hadn't just disrespected me at dinner. She'd stolen from my past, buried it, and built her false pride on top of it. And now, I had the evidence to expose her. "Send me the papers," I said quietly. "Are you sure, Claudine? This could stir up a storm." I smiled faintly, though my eyes burned. "Storms don't scare me, Mr. Langley. They remind people who they tried to bury. Because once I had those papers in my hands, I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was justice coming for the woman who'd ruined my husband's name." 2 days later, a thick manila envelope arrived by courier. Inside were photocopies of letters, company records, and ledger sheets, every one of them dated and signed. My late husband's handwriting stared back at me from the pages, firm and deliberate. "If anything happens to me, these records tell the truth." I sat there for a long while, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. Charles had died protecting his integrity, and the very woman who'd framed him had spent decades parading her stolen morality like fine jewelry. Not anymore. That evening, I called Malcolm and Nia. "I need you both to come by tomorrow," I told them. "And bring Patricia." "Patricia?" Malcolm echoed. "Why?" "You'll see." The next day they arrived. Patricia looked wary, clutching her handbag like a shield. "If this is about the nonsense online, Claudine, I already apologized." "This isn't about gossip," I said calmly, setting the envelope on the table between us. "This is about truth," she frowned. "What kind of truth?" I slid one document across to her. "The kind you thought would never see daylight again." Her eyes flickered down, scanning the paper. The color drained from her face. "These are lies," she said, her voice sharp. "Are they?" I asked quietly. "Because your signature is right there, Patricia. And so is my husband's. The man you framed 30 years ago to save your own reputation." Nia's hand flew to her mouth. Malcolm looked stunned. "Mom, what is this?" I turned to him gently. "Your father didn't just die of a heart attack. He died fighting to keep his name clean. And this woman, the one who humiliated me at dinner, made sure the world never knew the truth." Patricia's voice cracked. "I was young, scared." "You were selfish," I interrupted softly. "You stole a man's peace and built your image on his ruin." She looked down, trembling. "What do you want from me, Claudine? Money and apology?" I leaned forward. "I don't want your money. I want your silence. The kind that comes when guilt finally runs out of excuses." For the first time, Patricia didn't argue. Her shoulders sank. "You're going to expose me." "No," I said. "I'm going to forgive you." Her head shot up. "What?" "I'll send these papers to my lawyer for safekeeping." "I won't destroy you, Patricia. You'll do that on your own. Every day you wake up remembering the woman you could have been if you'd told the truth." She looked at me, speechless. I stood, my voice calm but resolute. "We're done here." As I walked them to the door, Nia turned to me, tears in her eyes. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." I smiled faintly. "Strength isn't loud, baby. It's quiet, patient, and it never forgets." And as I watched them drive away, I finally felt peace. Not because justice was loud, but because it had been served in silence. It's been 3 months since that afternoon, since the truth finally stepped out from the shadows where Patricia tried to bury it. The papers now rest in my safe deposit box, sealed with my lawyer's note, "Release only upon written instruction." I never had to use them. I didn't need to. The silence that followed told me Patricia had heard everything she needed to. Malcolm visits often now, not out of guilt, but love. He brings flowers, sometimes groceries, though I remind him I have more than enough. Nia comes too, always with that same warm light in her eyes. The girl has grown stronger since that night, softer in spirit, sharper in truth. They're learning together what took me decades to master: that dignity doesn't live in status, but in stillness. One evening, we sat on my porch watching the sun fade behind the trees. Malcolm looked over and said, "Mama, you could have destroyed them." "Why didn't you?" I smiled. "Because revenge feeds anger, but forgiveness feeds freedom. And I've been hungry for peace too long to waste another meal on bitterness." He nodded, quiet for a long time, then said something that caught me off guard. "I used to be proud of what I earned, Mama. Now I'm proud of what I've learned from you." My throat tightened. Then I did my job right. As night settled, I looked out at the soft glow of the streetlights, at the calm world I'd built from chaos. I thought about Charles, about how life had stolen his peace too soon, and how it had taken me years to reclaim it in his name. Some ghosts don't need haunting. They just need closure. Before we left the porch, I told Malcolm and Nia one last thing. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The world may overlook them, mock them, or mistake them for weak. But quiet people hold power others can't see. The power to endure, to forgive, and to rebuild without applause. Nia smiled through tears. "That sounds like you," I laughed softly. "Maybe. But it should sound like both of you, too." As they drove away, I stood under the porch light, the air still and full of memory. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a woman pretending. I felt whole. The world would keep spinning, loud, proud, shallow as ever. But I'd built my peace on deeper soil. And that peace, it didn't need to be understood, only lived, because sometimes the richest woman in the room is the one who doesn't have to prove a thing.